Today we are going to go over the causes and buildup of World War II. There are many causes for World War II. The first, and I would argue main cause, was the result of the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. The Treaty of Versailles tried to force self-determination onto the many new countries created out of the former Austria-Hungary and Ottoman empires. Unfortunately, when the lines of the boundaries were drawn, they did not take into account the different groups who lived in these new boundaries. The governments were not supported and could not handle all of the issues that were springing up. The League of Nations, which was created in order to stop world wars from occurring, proved also to be ineffective and really have no power. One of the provisions for the Treaty of Versailles had Germany taking full responsibility over the Great War. This caused many Germans to begin to feel demoralized and controlled. Some agreements on war were passed, like the Locarno Pact and the Kellogg-Briand Pact. But they, like the League of Nations, were ineffective and not enforced. The Great Depression had its grip on America and in turn the world. We had become so interdependent on each other that all modern countries and economies were affected. The first country to try and threaten world peace was Japan. In September of 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, a province of China. The League of Nations only passed a resolution condemning Japan for the invasion. The U.S. had a harsher but still ineffective response by issuing the Stinson Doctrine, which refused to recognize the new territory. In 1922, Benito Mussolini took over Italy with the support of the Fascist Party. Fascism is the idea that your race and/or nation is the best, and one can prove this by an aggressive show of force. This is also known as extreme nationalism. Mussolini, noticing that Japan was able to take a part of China with very little consequence, ordered the invasion of Ethiopia. Again, the League of Nations and the U.S. did little to stop this. Around the same time as Mussolini and the fascists were coming up in power in Italy, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party were also rising in Germany. The Nazis were also a fascist group. Also noticing the weakness of the League of Nations, Hitler, in March of 1936, invades an area of demilitarized land known as the Rhineland on the western side of the former boundaries of Germany. The U.S. at this time was in a period known as isolationists. Many people did not want to get entangled in another European war like they did in World War I. A series of neutrality acts were issued in order to keep the U.S. out of European affairs. The Neutrality Act of 1935 allowed the President to prohibit all arms shipments and forbid the U.S. citizens to travel on ships of belligerent nations. The Neutrality Act of 1936 prohibited the extension of loans and credits to belligerents, and the Neutrality Act of 1937 forbid the shipment of arms to the opposing sides of the Civil War that was occurring in Spain. Once war was officially declared in 1939, many Americans were concerned that the Neutrality Acts were not going to be enforced, and so they formed the American First Committee, which pushed to keep America out of World War II and become isolationists. By the early part of 1936, Hitler was going forward on his plan to eliminate the Jewish population of Europe, while at the same time retaking the areas of the German Empire that were taken under the Treaty of Versailles. In order to try and protect his aggressive movements from the countries who could not stop it, Hitler reached out to the Italian leader Benito Mussolini. This would form the Rome-Berlin Axis, otherwise known as the Pact of Steel. In 1937, China and Japan were involved in a full-scale war over who would control the territory. It was brutal and a long fight, and with many inhabitants losing their lives. In 1938, Hitler sent troops to take over Austria, his home country. Again, he was met with little resistance. Since not one country, nor the League of Nations, was forcing Germany to stop its takeover of lands lost from the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler sent troops to take a strip of land in Czechoslovakia known as Sudetenland in 1938. Great Britain and France were getting very concerned about Hitler's movements. President Roosevelt, also concerned, encouraged a meeting between the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, French President Edouard Daladier, Hitler, and Mussolini. The conference took place in September of 1938. Neville and Daladier agreed to allow Hitler to take or keep the land, since he stated he would not take any more land. This is known as the Munich Agreement, or appeasement. But in March of 1939, Hitler ignored the agreement and invaded all of Czechoslovakia. Neville and Daladier again appeased Hitler by only issuing a declaration that war would occur if Hitler continued on his plan and invade Poland. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, was also busy at this time negotiating with both Great Britain, France, and Germany in order to decide which side it would be on in case of war. In August of 1939, the Soviet Union announced they had signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler. This essentially gave Hitler a green light to continue on his quest and takeover of Poland.